Second row now.
Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and officially call the meeting to order for Tampa Bay Water. It is December 16th, 2019. This will be our last meeting till 2020. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance by my Vice Chair, Commissioner Eggers.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will start with public comment, and the Tampa Bay Water Board of Directors welcomes comments from the public about any issue or concern. Opinions provide valuable input to the board members. However, we request that public comments be directed to issues not directed personally against any board member or staff member. This provides a mutual respect between the board members and the public. Thank you. And the first person is David Ballard Geddes, Jr.
Hi,
morning.
good morning. David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. As early as 1995, Pinellas County Resolution 95-286 declares reclaimed water to be sold to the customer as a privilege. In the year 2012, Legislative House Bill 639 prescribes reclaimed water to be used indoors for toilet use. Section 1.13 of Maloney's Water Code, published in 1972, states this toilet service privilege of such is to be accompanied by an annual inspection charge and as prescribed by law as quartered in such manner entering civilian homes without a warrant. This charge is to be soldiered under the Third Amendment being written in the year 1791. Therefore, as built up, I find it extremely odd that it wasn't until last month your chief science technician, Mr. Hurd, brought this conservation effort forward, claiming this toilet use as being a new reclaimed water connection. Mr. Hurd stating that a partnership with Bruce Matullock of EGIA out of Sacramento, acting as a third-party program administrator, has developed a new toilet and urinal tracking inspection service as a new installation program tracking in real time the regularity of toilet flushing. Conflicting, I find over 20 years has passed since Resolution 95-286 was in the works to be commissioned, and it's been 7 years since House Bill 639 was legislated, 47 years since Maloney's Water Code was published, and 228 years since the Third Amendment was ratified, and as based on the 14th Amendment, birthing of an IT as a water jurisdiction, I find the founding principle of our founding fathers is to slowly give rise to a constitutional counterfeit operation waylaid as fact stemming from Article 3 of the Constitution, established and then reconstituting itself in Statute 373.715 as a water operation, constitutionally standing us on our heads and sodomizing our hindsight. Our water crisis is nothing more than a tyrannical, backbiting, backstabbing, doubling down on a constitutional act of deception set in motion from day number one of this government, seen as a so-called liberty and freedom of our fraudulent forefathers. And I feel this constitutional goosing and its gander will soon be on the table for a main course of discussion, as the fact of this Constitution here is being used as a medium to give rise to the fact of this Constitution. And I don't like being set up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Lutho.
Mark Lutho, Largo. Yeah, there, another example of you wasting. Look at the lights back there for the media. And what do we have here? Tampa Bay Water Intelligence Dashboard, and then Energy Management Program. Like you could manage energy. Look at that. Who's in that room? You clowns. So energy management program, right? Yeah. And then you go over here to the wetland inundation potential in the northern Tampa Bay area. Well, how's that going to affect it? Correlation, morons. And then your annual demand forecast evaluation and long-term demand forecast. Oh, boy. You just don't get it. Here's the headline. Rising seas, shrinking ice, and soaring temperatures from NOAA. Oh, boy. Our future depends on the Arctic ice. Save it from the ravages of warming, and we can save the planet. A world is speeding dangerously close to a tipping point. The outback of Australia is being parched within a drop of its life. Slash emissions now, UN warns. Sleepwalking toward climate catastrophe. And then here, this is really pretty. Rest in peace. Koala dies after viral brush fire rescue. As the seas rise, Florida Keys look to state for support. New abnormal, a Fed branch warns of warming risk. As the research makes clear that new abnormal is already here. Well, like I say, when you fools burn the lights in a room when there isn't anybody in here, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip of the iceberg. Y'all need to go.
Thank you. Your
You're
3 minutes is up.
worthless.
Thank you.
Respect.
We will now move to our agenda. And before we take up the consent agenda, is there any discussion by board members or any item to be removed? I see.
Move approval.
Move approval. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. Okay, we are now on the regular agenda. I'll turn it over to General Manager Matt Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. Just wanted to mention the follow-up to the Swift Mud Workshop that was held on December the 10th. I, along with some other staff members, attended. There was some good discussion. I sent out a summary email to all of you this past Thursday, kind of covering the takeaways from that meeting. Moving into the executive committee report from the November 18th executive committee meeting, there was some discussion about the February board meeting and perhaps looking at some other dates. And I was asked to poll the board members to see their availability on some alternate dates. As it turns out, the only date that all board members are available is the original approved date of February 17th. So my recommendation is to perhaps leave that on the 17th. That's already approved. Also, at the executive committee meeting, most of the items are somewhere on the agenda. Mr. Hurd did make a presentation about the reclaimed credit evaluation as a follow-up to some of the discussion from the October board meeting. Mr. Hurd walked through the credit formula and the development of that, working with member governments. And also, after the October board meeting, I sent an email to the board outlining the formula the rationale behind it and explanations that could perhaps be used, because the board did contemplate or discuss in October that could be a subject for a future board workshop for some policy level discussions, which I certainly concur with. So those are the items that I plan to cover as far as the executive committee, unless there are any questions.
Any questions? Seeing no questions, we'll now move to Brandon Moore. You would like to come forward for the mini grant program.
Thank you. And good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Today I will provide an update on 3 of the outreach and education programs that the board is currently funding, including Crossbar Environmental Education Center for Pasco County Schools, the Water Education Exhibit at the Glazer Children's Museum, and the Regional Source Water Protection Mini Grant Program. And at the end of my presentation, I'll invite the chair and vice chair down to present the checks, and the rest of the board gather behind there, and we'll get a photo. No other action is required on this item. So we've been funding a portion of the watershed and source water protection programming at the Crossbar Education Center to the Pasco County School District since 2012. Annually, more than 5,000 students from Pasco County schools, they learn hands-on about water, wetland health, watershed protection, and water quality. We also recently opened the latest element in a comprehensive water exhibit at the Glazer Children's Museum. The new water treatment station teaches kids how water gets from source to tap, while a new pipe wall puts water use in context to their daily lives. Children receive a well-rounded experience to put them in touch with their local community and their local environment. And we think that our unique water supply system requires a unique learning experience, and this is definitely a unique learning experience at the Glazer Children's Museum. Interestingly, the partnership began in 2015 as when the museum received a source water protection mini grant for some improved messaging on source water protection and conservation. And the partnership has developed into something really special for the families in the region. Which brings me to the mini grant program. Tampa Bay Water has been involved in protecting our drinking water since we were created, and we've provided this grant program for more than a decade. It allows us to partner with the Tampa Bay community on a common goal of protecting our drinking water sources. This mini grant program is offered to nonprofit groups, schools, and teachers, and universities, and other community organizations, all of which are eligible to receive between $2,000 and $10,000 each for projects related to source water protection in the Tampa Bay area. Last year, Tampa Bay Water awarded grants to Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful, Keep Pinellas Beautiful, Sickles High School, Walter L. Sickles High School, and the Pasco Education Foundation on behalf of Wendell Crinn Technical High School. And I'll quickly review these programs before announcing this year's recipients. Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful used its grant funding to engage nearly 20,000 volunteers for more than 50,000 hours of community service. They removed more than 350,000 pounds of litter, 25,000 pounds of invasive plants, and the program reached nearly 40,000 youth and adults. Similarly, the Keep Pinellas Beautiful program used its grant money to continue its K-12 education curriculum on watershed health, water quality, and source water health, with 3 workshops that resulted in removing thousands of pounds of trash and invasive vegetation. The Pasco Education Foundation used its grant funds to create Wendell Crinn Technical High School's aquaponics farming system. The system uses approximately 90% less water than traditional farming and eliminates agricultural runoff. It's located adjacent to the high school cafeteria where the entire student body can learn and view it daily. Sickles High School used its funding to relocate and expand the school's hydroponic garden to make it more accessible as a teaching tool. This project also reduces the amount of water used and prevents agricultural runoff, and it reaches more than 600 students each year. Now on to this year's recipients. For the 2020 funding cycle, they are Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful, Keep Pinellas Beautiful, Pinellas County Schools, and the Coffee Pot Bayou Watershed Alliance. I'd like to now invite a representative from each group up to the podium to say a few words about their program and what they're planning to do over the coming year. And then once we're finished, after they have a chance to address the board, then we'll come down for the photo. I'd like to invite Debbie Evenson up first from Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you so much for this opportunity and receiving this grant again this year. Being able to reach so many youth in our community is really important, and we're excited this coming year with our Environmental Education Center that sits on Reed property in Hillsborough County. It actually is on the Hillsborough River, so being able to bring youth out to our Environmental Education Center is going to be a huge component with the source water protection. Not only will they have hands-on activities inside the building, but we'll also be able to take them outside and see firsthand the importance of protecting our waterways. So with that being said, thank you again so much and happy holidays.
And now Pat DePlasco from Keep Pinellas Beautiful.
Good morning. Good morning. I stand in front of you this morning with a heart full of gratitude, and I just want you to know that every penny that you have supported us with has helped build our program to where it is today, and I am so proud of where we are today. Wait till I give you the stats. I'm so excited. Anyway, our grant that we were previously awarded was Educating, Engaging, and Empowering to Create a Healthier Tampa Bay. And not only did we do the 3 workshops that were depicted in the pictures, we provided the community with educational presentations that were also paired with environmental service projects. So when we went into the schools, it just wasn't like a regular classroom presentation, one and done. We developed a relationship with the teacher and then had a follow-up activity afterwards. And I really believe that pairing education with the hands-on will really make a bigger difference in what we're trying to accomplish. We've also provided with your funds an additional 2 special events called Kids Can, and they're service projects and environmental learning experiences for elementary and middle school students. We held one in the winter and one in the spring. The one in the winter was at Honeymoon Island, and there were 61 participants, all elementary school age. And the second one was in the spring at Fort DeSoto Park, and we had 72 participants. The one that I was really, not that I'm not excited about all of them, but we got Girl Scouts together. And our goal was to have 200 Girl Scouts come out from all over Pinellas County. We ended up with over 100, which that was exciting. And actually, for the first year doing it, it was great that it was only 100. But what we did was we set up educational stations at, where were we? It's just leaving me at Clam Bayou Park. And the Girl Scouts got to go through the educational stations, and they were with our educational partners. We had the urban forestry out there. We had the Tampa Bay Estuary Program out helping us. We had the sea turtle trackers, and then we went through the different stations, and we had a water table. So the Girl Scouts got to go through the different stations and then participate in a cleanup. So they were really great opportunities, and we couldn't have done those without your support. To give you the total results of what we've accomplished, from January 1st, 2019 to November 30th, because that's where we stopped our data because we're still going, Keep Pinellas Beautiful conducted 421 educational presentations. We participated in 39 outreach events. Therefore, we educated 50,159 individuals. Keep Pinellas Beautiful engaged 20,064 volunteers this year. Our organization coordinated 1,065 community projects, and as a result, our combined efforts abated 802,000 pounds of litter, as well as we've removed 219,632.72 pounds of invasive plants. We recovered 13,774 pounds of recyclables. Now, we would recover more recyclables, but what ends up happening is when you're pulling them in from areas, a lot of the recyclables are contaminated. So I don't want anyone ever to think that we're not trying to recycle what we're pulling in. We're just trying to do the best we can following the stream. literally. Anyway, when you multiply $22.50, which is the value of a volunteer hour, by 54,932.97 volunteer hours, it shows that we save taxpayers over $1 million in community improvement services. So look at the return on your investment. We really do want you to know that we appreciate the funds and they are put to good use. Thank you very much.
Now I'll invite Crystal Pruitt from Pinellas County Schools.
Good morning. I am Crystal Pruitt, and I'm so happy and privileged and honored to be here this morning representing Pinellas County Schools Journeys in Journalism program. The Journeys in Journalism program has been around for over 15 years. It started out as a program in partnership with the Tampa Bay Times, and it still exists. The program spans across 3 schools, starting in elementary school at Melrose Elementary in southern Pinellas County, John Hopkins Middle School, and Lakewood High School. We are super, super excited to have the opportunity to implement a public information education program. Our students are journalists, and they work with professional media and journalists here in the area. And the goal is to develop some marketing, education materials in partnership with World Partnerships, which is a global connection. So we plan to talk about, tell our stories to international journalists and international students and teachers as well. One of the unique things about this project is that we're using project-based learning to do this. And what that means is that we'll be collaborating with math and science departments, as well as working with our civic groups. One of the things that the students at John Hopkins, when I mentioned this project to them and they were super excited about applying, is the fact that they get to actually do hands-on experience working on water conservation, water quality. We'll be doing some researching, gathering data, telling those stories, sharing it with the community. And best of all, at John Hopkins Middle School, we actually have a community garden that feeds a lot of the members in that community. So students will have a chance to do some xeriscaping to improve the garden currently, but it is a community space. It's an opportunity for them to do some service learning as well. So we are super excited to come and work on this project, and we really appreciate being nominated for this award. Thank you.
And finally, Walt Japp from the Coffee Pot BAYE Watershed Alliance.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation and the award of the grant. We're very appreciative. This is our first year of existence. We started off about a year ago in Coffee Pot Bayou. If you're not familiar with the area, it's in northeast St. Pete, about 100 acres. Has a very important bird rookery. 400 different birds breed there on an annual basis, including spoonbills and the very, very rare egret, the roseate egret, that's also quite rare. Our group is doing work in cleanup. We're doing work in water quality. We go out monthly with the water, with a group from Canterbury School principally, and we sample water. We have been very active in the northern fringe of Coffee Pot Bayou in an area that is known as an easement, which means it's no man's land. It's on the property of the Masonic home. And we've been able to remove about 8 tons of invasive plants there and go in and plant about 50 different plants that are watershed type plants that are typical in the mangroves, native species to speak of. Our plan in the next year is to expand this into Smacks Bayou, which is actually a sister bayou, and at one time there was a small creek that went between the two of them. And so we're very fortunate, we think, of being able to get a lot of community groups to work together. We have schools, we have a church, we have Boy Scouts. We have been very fortunate to work with the Keep Pinellas Beautiful people. They have been very helpful in sustaining us, and we continue to work on this, and we are thankful for the funds, and we appreciate your help, and thank you very much.
Thanks again for all the work all of your organizations do to help protect drinking water sources. Unless the board has any comments or questions, we could do the photos.
Seeing none.
Okay.
Ready to take the photos?
Yes. So chairman and vice chair come down. Then if the rest of the board,
I did have a quick question. How many organizations applied and how many were we able to?
there were a total of 10, and we awarded 4.
Okay, thanks.
And if the rest of the board members could squeeze in behind there.
I was behind the chair. I was behind the chair, so but that wasn't a problem. It was over there. So we went to put in at Great Preserve and the dock is underwater. So we put in at Francis. Separately. And I'm gonna have our staff pull more. Great, because there's trees blocking the way. Right. I've never done it. Trey didn't, we had no clue it was so beautiful. Stuff. We usually go to the wiki watching. Well, we do an outdoor adventure after Thanksgiving. And we did a local river. So pretty.
It is.
Yeah, it was low tide. Lovely. Did you know Laura Starkey? Wait, I'll take a second. So Laura Starkey.
Pretty close to that downloaded in the background, so this is now so you can go between. But I've been upstream of Rowan Road from John.
You know, we saw no wake or something. We're like, what? That must have been in high tide.
Yeah. But Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, would Mr. Oakley like
Yeah.
recognize?
Since we're giving out checks and all, I'd like to remind everyone, I brought a check today from, with the Coochie River Electric, and they service, I believe, 6 of our sites. And we got
Excuse
a
me, could we
capital,
have somebody shut that door back there so we can, thank you.
so we received a capital refund from WREC of $99,000 plus. And I've already given that to the treasurer.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Well, great. Well, very worthy projects, and so happy that Tampa Bay Water is doing a lot to educate and get the word out about, Tampa Bay Water and the good work we do here. Okay, Mr. Jordan.
Yes, ma'am. This is item G3, which is the follow-up on the, the workshop. The board has discussed scheduling, and we were directed to secure a facilitator for this workshop, and it was discussed to perhaps have this workshop on the date of the January Executive Committee meeting, which is January 27th. As it turns out, we did get a contract with May's Consulting Facilitation Services, and it's on the agenda for $34,600. And we were looking forward to scheduling board meetings with the facilitator, but there's some things that have transpired since that time that makes the January 27th date unlikely. And so I want to just open this up for board discussion. I would like to say that Ms. Mays is here if the board has questions.
Okay, would Ms. Mays like to come to the podium and just maybe introduce yourself and say a few words?
Good morning. I'm very much looking forward to facilitating the workshops with you, my team, Carlos Alvarez and me. Carlos has had some unexpected health issues, plus a member of his immediate family passed away unexpectedly. So that's the reason why Mr. Jordan has indicated we may need to postpone to give Carlos some recovery time.
Great. Would you like to say a few words about yourself, your background, your firm's background, and give the board some insight into what you do?
Sure. Some people in this room may remember me from the governance workshops. I was the facilitator in that process that transitioned West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority to Tampa Bay Water. I know exactly how long ago that was because I was pregnant during that process, and my daughter is 23 now.
Oh, wow.
I'm actually retired from my practice. I had a practice for many years as a land use planner in a planning and landscape architecture firm, and then I transitioned to a firm that was devoted to public outreach and mediation and facilitation. I was also a teacher of political science at the University of Tampa and Hillsborough Community College. So I'm coming out of retirement to do this. Carlos Alvarez and I have known each other almost 40 years. We have co-facilitated in some very long, years-long processes dealing with Everglades restoration. We're very comfortable with each other. We complement each other. And we trust each other. So I told Michelle when she approached me that I would only come back if I had a partner, and the partner I wanted was Carlos Alvarez. So we're looking forward to it. Carlos is fine. He just needs a little bit of time to kind of get his feet underneath him, and then we'll be ready to go.
Can you give us an idea of when you're ready to go? What's the time frame? Like, what's our starting point?
I think it would be we currently have some interviews scheduled for January 7th that week. I think if we were to postpone those about 3 or 4 weeks and then postpone the first workshop a corresponding period of time, that would be perfectly all right.
So board members, we're looking at a 3 to 4 week postponement from the original date. And I see that's a very reasonable, time frame. So does anybody have any questions of Ms. Mays?
Comment.
Yes, Commissioner
Thank
Eggers?
you. Our prayers are with him as he recovers. So just to comment, I have had the opportunity to chat with a number of people about Tampa Bay Water over the last few months, just because, number one, I believe in it, but I also believe that we need to do a better and better job with our member governments and all the partners that are involved in this effort. So one of the things that has come up, and I think it's a good idea, and maybe it'll be a part of our discussion here, part of the discussion during our facilitated workshops, would be for our member governments to take opportunities, each of them, maybe to talk about the state of water within their domain, and then how it interacts with Tampa Bay Water. What are some of the strengths that we've enjoyed together? What are some of those challenges that we have as partners? And I think give maybe more direct access from each of our member government staff to this board, which I think from time to time is important to do. So just, maybe as we'll have opportunities to talk about that when we get together one-on-one, but I think something for the board to think about in the coming year will be a way to kind of unite us a little better. So,
Well, I think, we have discussed that, and that will be a part of the discussion. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Okay, we are too. Great. Thank you so much. And we do need a motion to approve
So move.
this agreement. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass. Thank you very much. And now we'll do the legislative update. Pete Dunbar and Matthew Blair. Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. I will do this as briefly as I can. There was a written report that I think accompanies your materials. I would observe that there were 3 bills, and I'll touch on them briefly, that were filed the day after the report was filed, and they deal with bottled water and taxes on bottled water. Last week completed the interim committee work for the 2020 legislative session. I checked this morning. I would guess that about 70% of the legislation that will be considered or is available for consideration during the upcoming session is now filed and part of the formal system. There are 7 items dealing directly with water and water resources. The most significant is the one that we were anticipating when Mr. Blair and I were here last, dealing with recycled water. The House version of that legislation is now pending by Representative Maggard. And since its filing, we have been working with the sponsors. The Senate companion bill has not surfaced yet. We're also advised that the current version that's pending may not be in its final version. There is still, the sponsors are still looking at individual changes to the legislation. There are some financial appropriations requests that Tampa Bay Water is asking for this time, and I'm going to ask Mr. Blair if he'd come up and address those briefly.
Yes, so you have 2 funding requests that are pending, and we discussed those last time we were here. They're still in process. The legislature began aggressively appropriations work last week. Things have been a little bit quiet the preceding weeks. And we expect that pace to continue, obviously, with the start of session in January. So again, just as a reminder, those 2 funding requests are being sponsored by Representative Grant in the House and Senator Hooper in the Senate, and both are proceeding as would be expected at this point.
And Madam Chair, if there are questions, we'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, happy holidays to everyone.
Any questions, members? I have one question. Have you met with Representative Maggard?
Not yet.
About his bill?
No.
Yep.
We, as you can appreciate, I would observe that the main dialogue on this is happening at a much higher level than a freshman Republican member. The same is true in the Senate. We do expect that Senator Albritton will handle the legislation, but clearly the person and the driving force behind it is the president-designate. So the dialogue has been with Wilton Simpson, and that's the focal point of our discussions.
So, because the part about his bill that said prohibits the exclusion of recycled water use from specified regional water supply, specific supply planning, I would imagine you'll keep an eye on that.
Yes, and we've been working with the Tampa Bay Water staff with the initial language. One other thing I might mention, and this is a protocol and inside the House itself, not the Senate, where bills that are your priority to handle, the first two must be in the system by November the 15th, and that ranks them as priority. So I think that, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I don't think that the legislation is finalized yet from the indications that we've had. It was filed in order to meet that time frame to leave it as a priority measure in the House. But yes, we are watching that language.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, stay tuned. You always say in the legislature. Great. Thank you all. And actually, Mr. Jordan, when you get the updates, could you make sure that our utility directors and board members get those updates that Mr. Dunbar sent you?
Those status reports, yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. There's no general counsel report?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and we're now going to do the water quality update, I-1 from Steve Fleischhacker. I always want to put a B in there, Fleischbacker.
There's a lot of letters, and I couldn't use any more, actually. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Today's update will highlight the Exhibit D water quality report findings that were presented at the October 21st board meeting. I will then focus on the board's questions about why additional studies are necessary, that is, how the proposed studies will differ from the study work performed to date. Mr. Ken Hurd will then address the board's questions about timeline to implement the projects. This is an action item. We will be requesting board approval of the report and our proposed next steps at the end of this presentation. Water quality is a key consideration in the agency's governing documents. Through the interlocal agreement and master water supply contract, the member governments established a common regional water quality. The goal was to provide a common benefit at a common cost at defined points of connection. Through these contracts, Tampa Bay Water is required to deliver quality water, which is defined as water that meets state and federal drinking water standards, as well as additional parameters in the Exhibit D, which is an attachment to the Master Water Supply Contract. Section 2 of that Master Water Supply Contract contemplated Exhibit D would be modified from time to time to address changes in regulations or customer requirements. Exhibit D has been modified more than once over the past 20 years. The most significant change, which occurred in 2004, required years of research on the utility's new water blends and chloramine usage. Most importantly, at that time, we had to understand how the new blends and chloramines could affect member governments' distribution systems. The changes were made more than a decade ago, and today, our water quality is better than or meets all state and federal standards. And it meets the current Exhibit D requirements as well. At the request of the member governments, Tampa Bay Water has been reevaluating Exhibit D water quality requirements to enhance water quality and enhance member governments' ability to manage their distribution systems. As I said, it's been more than a decade since the last in-depth examination, and that's why we were requested to do one now. Now, working with the member government staff, enhanced water quality is quantified as shown on this slide. As you'll see, the first column lists the important water quality parameters that were undertaken for this study. The second column identifies the existing Exhibit D requirements,
And the third column identifies the proposed levels to achieve what all members agreed to be enhanced water quality. Now, to achieve the lower numbers in the third column requires different water treatment technologies. I'm not going to go through all of the technologies that were evaluated. Some of that was previously presented. But the important point is that in total, we're looking at from 33 to 45 different, 45 water treatment processes, which are identified in the final report. And these are necessary to achieve the levels you see in that third column. As you look at the numbers, you can see how much the numbers would be changing and how they would be primarily being reduced. Total organic carbon, which is a naturally occurring substance, became the focus of the water quality study. This is because total organic carbon reacts with disinfectants to form disinfection byproducts, which are regulated at the federal and state level. Total organic carbon also affects how long the disinfectant residual lasts in member governments' distribution systems. Maintaining that residual is essential to safe water delivery. That's why you have heard at times, we refer to this sometimes as the TOC study, because this parameter is the most important that we're evaluating in this work and addressing. Now, we have worked collaboratively with member governments to identify and quantify, as you saw on the last slide, what this study was all about. Our common goal is to achieve enhanced water quality. As shown in this slide, we have continued this study in a collaborative process. The initial draft report was provided to member governments in early October. A workshop was then held to walk the member government staff through the report, findings, and recommendations. We then presented an overview of those findings to the board at your last meeting. Now, following that board meeting, we received over 50 comments from member governments. The comments sought clarifications on costs and benefits. Now, many of the comments were about next steps. Now, we will be working closely with the member governments on the development of those next steps. As you can see at the bottom of this slide, a revised draft report was subsequently provided to member governments after incorporating their comments. At that time, we also provided a summary of all of the comments and our responses, and we shared that with all members. These documents were then finalized, and you have a copy of those in your packet, that being the report and the summary of the comments and responses. Now, work to date involved characterization of the different source waters in terms of total organic carbon, disinfectant decay, and disinfectant byproducts formation. These test data were plugged into a model to calculate water quality in all points of connection, and then technical literature was used to estimate treatment plant performance, or I should say treatment performance, and planning level cost estimates. So what's next? We now need to evaluate how our actual waters, our source waters, will respond to the various treatment and blending options. We can't just rely on studies. We could use those to guide us, but we need to test the waters that we have. Most importantly, we must evaluate potential impacts of these treatment changes on member government distribution systems, particularly in terms of corrosion control and water stability. It's critical. The next study, I should say, focuses on treatment of our waters in order to properly formulate a basis of design. So the two studies, the one we have completed and the one we are proposing, are very different. But the next study is essential in the overall process. I'll now turn over the presentation to Mr. Hurd. He'll discuss the project timeline and address your questions about schedule.
Morning, Madam Chair, board members. I'm going to overview the schedule moving forward, understanding that we are in the early stages of a multi-step deliberate process. We all know how important water quality is to us and 2.5 million people in the Tampa Bay region that we collectively serve. Therefore, we must move forward the very deliberate, technically sound, and thorough, well thought out process, including the steps that we take and the decision points in the future. We're just finishing the first two steps on this chart as we're asking for board approval of the report and to move forward with the next steps that are recommended in the report. We want to do that, as Mr. Fleischacker indicated, because it's really critical that that's done before we would ask you to approve specific projects to implement. So we're asking the board for approval to move forward with these additional studies. I'd like to now overview with you the upcoming schedule and explain the key steps along the way. And also, I want to address the questions that came up in October about what can we do, is there anything we can do to expedite or move the process forward a little quicker. Here's the future timeline with the first step, indicating that we need to perform these additional studies. As we mentioned, these additional studies are essential to understand how specific treatment processes will work using actual source water quality in our system out in the field. And we'll also be studying how these water quality changes may affect each member government's individual distribution system, because all these systems are unique in their own way. Upon board approval today, we'll begin the scope development for this work, while we will definitely be working very closely with the member governments on developing this scope of work. We expect to be back to the board sometime in the spring of next year with a contract for engineering consulting services to administer the work. That would then be followed by a year-long study process where we would also be working very closely with the member government's technical staff throughout that effort. The study process will be followed by the development of alternative implementation phasing options and updating the cost estimates for the recommended improvements. Now, you may recall back in October, we presented this information to the board. The preliminary estimates, just looking at total organic carbon treatment, could range anywhere from $126 million to $208 million of capital costs, depending upon the level of total organic carbon removal that we're anticipating. And then when you consider potentially adding hardness treatment as part of that, hardness removal, those costs, the capital costs, could exceed $300 million. So we're talking about substantial investment. And when we're just looking at the impact on the uniform rate, just the total organic carbon removal process could impact the rate by anywhere from 22 cents to 44 cents per 1,000 gallons. Now, this will lead us to the year 2022, and that's when the board will be positioned to consider these water quality treatment projects for implementation. We would like to note that during the same time frame, the board will also be considering selection of the next master water plan project. Staff will present the board with various project configurations, considering not only these potential projects, which could be over $500 million in capital costs, but also projects that are included in our capital improvement program. And those include projects that we call renewal replacement projects or maintenance projects that are necessary in order for us to maintain our system in reliable working order or condition. Now, one of the other things that we'll be considering during this time is how all of these different projects clearly can be implemented over time, looking at the cash flow requirements. But we'll also be considering our existing debt service obligations so that we can holistically determine what effect these different project configurations are going to have on the uniform rate in future out years. So depending upon which projects, specific projects are selected and the phasing sequences that the board elects to move forward with, full project implementation, and that includes design, permitting, property acquisition, bidding, construction, all the way to the point of being able to commission and operate these improvements, can take 5 years and potentially longer depending upon the number of projects that are selected and then the other phasing considerations that we have to take into account. So as directed by the board back in October, the staff did look at opportunities for expediting the schedule. One option would be to reduce the board deliberation time, but in this case, we wanted to make sure that we provide the board with adequate time for the board to evaluate the options and also consider timing of other funding needs of the agency, like the master water plan projects for the future. Now, this is all scheduled to occur in 2022, as we talked about on the previous slide. The other thing we looked at was the opportunity to consider an alternative project delivery method. For the purpose of this time schedule estimate, we used a design, bid, build, which is more of a traditional implementation strategy. If we went with a design build approach, we could save anywhere from 4 to 6 months of time of that window that we had identified for the project implementation phase. So this concludes our presentation on the report, the findings, and the next steps. We're recommending that the board approve the water quality report and the proposed next steps to keep this process moving forward. And that first step would include initiating engineering consultant selection for the additional studies. And of course, we'll be working very closely with the member government staff on scoping and completing these additional studies. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Fleischacker and myself are here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We did have a good conversation about this at the executive committee meeting. And are there members that have questions? Commissioner Smith.
Hi, I'm not clear what we skip if we go to the streamlined process. Can you explain that? Sorry.
The design, or you mean on the board deliberation period?
Right, this last streamlined schedule alternatives, reduce the board deliberation time, is that?
Yes. Now, what we currently have in the schedule would be at least 6 months of deliberation time. And in fact, the entire 2022 period is kind of established to evaluate different project alternatives, not only the water quality projects, but also the master water plan program options. So what we'd be talking about is making a decision early on in the year 2022, which staff would prefer that we provided adequate time to look at all the different configurations, including the master water plan projects, so that the board could consider all of these options holistically and not just approving projects kind of on a piecemeal basis. So you would understand the ultimate effect, what effect those decisions would have on the uniform rate in the future.
And so that would be not reducing the board deliberation time, this method of considering everything holistically, which appeals to me. That would be not reducing the.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that would not be our recommendation to
Okay.
reduce that. I mean, we believe that the board needs to take adequate time, given the significance of these decisions and, making water quality changes to a system like this that serves 2.5 million people.
I agree. I have one more question, and maybe this is a rookie question, but what is the extent of Tampa Bay Water's responsibility for water quality? How far into the member government systems does that go?
That's a good question. Our water quality obligation goes to these points of connection.
Okay.
Where we provide the water, the wholesale delivery to the member government. And that's where the point where we have to meet the Exhibit D requirements that Mr. Fleischacker mentioned. And then from that point forward, it's the member government's responsibility.
Thank you.
But it's
That makes
important that
sense.
we still work together because, the water doesn't know that it's passing that point of connection, so we need to make sure that we work together on these issues.
Thank you.
Well, and this is a question I asked, is how many points of connection are there? There's 20. And so that's a lot. And so my understanding is the water that you take in, that you filter, you send back to the points of connection, and that's where we take over, is when it gets delivered to wherever it's going.
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay. You're the in, we're the out. Okay, Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. Obviously, this brings up a whole lot of questions and thoughts, and I agree that the deliberation time needs to, we don't need to shorten that any. It's complicated enough for this board right now to make those decisions, but I would guess that by the time they would get to that, there'll be other members on this board with less experience, and so deliberation time is going to be critical, so I wouldn't shorten that. I think the funding issue that you talk about as it relates to our current debt and how that's going to expire and when this would kick in is going to be important to understand. I know Councilmember Miranda brought up a couple of meetings ago, and I think it's something that we have to realize that at some point this is going to kick in some kind of capital project that between the water and this one, water supply project, or two that we have coming up, and this one that extends our Tampa Bay Water Agreement well beyond 2038, as dictated. So I just think that's something that I'm certainly, all in on it at this point, but I just think that's something that we have to keep in mind and maybe start having those discussions. And I don't mean today or tomorrow, but as we go down the road, that's going to be a critical part. And I think your comment about the 20 points of connection is real in that each point has a different blended type of water, and how that treatment goes depends on that water at that point and the system that it's going into. So I think that it is complicated and it's not one size fits all, and wherever you're getting off the system of water, it's going to make a big difference on the kind of treatment. It was interesting having some conversation about even looking at our system right now without regards to doing anything, that it might make a difference where that point of connection is located. So you could move a point of connection with lower expenses, not too expensive to do, and change the water consistency that's coming in, and therefore water quality. So there may be some low-hanging things that we can do in the meantime to start addressing some of this. So
Great.
good, thank you.
Yes, Councilman Rice.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So today we are approving this study and the next steps, the Hazen study, but we're not approving which scenario. Those are the studies that we're looking at, and then at what point in time does the board decide on this scenario? Is that a year from now?
That would be during the year 2022, that board deliberation timeframe, sometime in that window. The next thing we'll be doing is, looking at the specific, doing pilot testing to see what exactly are these new treatment recommendations. What can they do given these different sources of water and the different blends that Commissioner Eggers mentioned? So all of that would be looked at over this year-long study period.
And on page X of the report, there's a table with the present worth cost. And could you explain that table? Because it looks like we've been talking about 208 million as the outlier highest cost, but in this table, it looks like when you take into consideration, compounding interest over 30 years, it's actually 405 million.
That's a good point, council member. What we've tried to do there is look at not just, we talk about capital costs because that's the cost when we're thinking and looking at debt service issues. That cost actually includes the operating and maintenance costs. So you're not just looking at a capital cost because there's also operating and maintenance obligations that go along with selecting a specific configuration of projects. What we tried to do also in the report was kind of communicate that in terms of what's effect on the uniform rate. And that's what that does. It considers not only the capital costs, which we considered amortizing that over a 30-year period, but we also included the operating and maintenance costs, the chemicals and power associated with that, so that we're not leaving out any of the costs. It's all disclosed up front, either as this present value cost or in terms of what effect does it have on the uniform rate, because that will include all of those different costs.
Okay. Thank you.
And that is really important. 2006 was when the board kicked the can down the road and did not do. Did they go through an extensive process before they made that decision? I meant to ask you that.
It was not the same process. I would say this process was probably a little more in detail and looking at specific blending and treatment options instead of, looking at it more, I guess, at a very, very preliminary stage.
Right. Well, we can't kick the can down the road anymore, and the costs haven't changed much. It's, minimum 200 million. It's going to be between 2 and 400 million. And so we're just going to have to bite the bullet and make sure we have good water quality out there. Commissioner Oakley?
Good report, Mr. Hurd. I was picked up on some things that were said, but the potable water that's delivered to all member governments is the same quality potable water that we all get. Is that correct?
Well, it's not all exactly the same. Because of these different blends, each source has its own unique quality. Now, all of it meets safe drinking water requirements, but there are differences in the constituents in the water. I mean, the parameters do differ depending upon the blend and where these points of connection are along our regional system of delivery to the member government. So it's not exactly the same. I'd say it's similar. Right. It definitely meets all standards, but there are some differences.
You're talking about where it comes from the bypass canal or our wells and that blend that we get from desal and the reservoir. You're talking about that blend could change based on where you're drawing the water.
Correct.
Each day, I guess. So
some members, like Hillsborough County, for example, at one of their points of connection, they're getting water from just the surface water plant and the desal plant.
Okay.
And then others are getting a blend of that and groundwater, depending on where they're located along, the 20 points of connection in the system.
Yeah, I was thinking that blend occurred in the plant, in the treatment plant, and then delivered out as the same blend, actually, or potable water. But from what you're telling me, I understand that it can change based on where you're pulling the water from. So also what can change that is the fact at point of delivery for each member government, It's how we maintain those lines in our specific counties or cities, you know, to take that water. Because that could change it too if you didn't keep up with the maintenance of all your lines and the flushing and the things that you need to do to keep those lines clear, correct?
Yeah, that's a good point. That it's not, it's a process that has to be maintained all the way to the delivery to the customer. So, yeah, the member governments have that responsibility to maintain their systems so that the quality water can be delivered from, where we deliver it to the member government. Then they take that on to delivery to the retail customers at the end of the pipes.
Right, I got you. So, but in Pasco County have good water, I can guarantee you that, so these guys make sure of it, so, but, and we always have, so it's a great system, and it's one that we tweak as we go to have more volumes look in the future, so I look forward to all that coming together, but it's been very good for Pasco County water system. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Eggers,
Just one
follow
more
up?
comment, and I touched on it in a minute, and just your comments. Yeah, I think as we go through this process that we're about to approve, I certainly hope that we continue to be on guard as far as what each of our member governments have going on, that we can, we don't wait all the way till, the end of the process. There may be some things today. I think about, the city of Tampa who, we here might be getting some additional water from us. And the fact that there's a difference in the water that they get. Again, it's not pointing fingers at anybody. It's like, what can we do to bring a different or a better quality water so that blending doesn't upset the apple cart as much. And I hate to, if there's some things we can do in the short term that are low hanging, that I want to make sure we don't miss out on those opportunities. And so I really commend you all for continuing, hopefully, to work closely to make sure we've exhausted those options. So thank you.
Yes, we'll definitely be doing that.
Well, I mean, yeah, my comment was going to be that you have to work with the member governments because different member governments are having different water quality issues. We're having water quality issues in Hillsborough. So I really expect you all to be bringing them to the table on an ongoing basis, not just a specialized type effort to, get them together, but the member governments or utility directors are going to be a very important part of this discussion, especially if our constituents are going to bear the cost of the water quality improvement, which is going to be the case because that will flow down to the constituents. So thank you all. Very good report. We need a motion to
Yes,
approve the
yes, ma'am.
presentation.
We have the recommendations on the slide, but yeah,
Right.
we're asking for board approval.
Okay.
Report.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendations of final water quality report and propose next steps. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and just wanted to discuss that we certainly have and will continue meeting with the utility directors. It is certainly paramount of importance that we continue working together. It's not only the water we deliver, it's also how that works within your distribution system. And also, just as a reminder, we've had an ongoing water quality working group that works with the member governments, and that's been going on for a good number of years. We're doing additional work with your staff just to do exactly what you said, and I could not agree more, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we're on the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed, show that pass. Thank you all very much. And then we're at I2, which is Tirsu Asefa?
Yes,
Did I pronounce it right?
that's correct.
Good.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. This agenda item provides update to our long-term demand forecast, an accompanying board memo, as well as a technical report provide additional information on this presentation. Tampa Bay Water uses the demand forecast for two purposes. The first one is it's used as a basis for annual budgeting. That would be the one I'm going to spend more time today. And that helps us to maintain rates. And the second use of the demand projection is through the planning and supply reliability analysis. That one we use through the probabilistic demand forecast. Typically, we end up getting a range of future scenarios we looked at that help us to understand the uncertainty on key drivers about the demand. We do the demand forecasting by 7 demand planning areas that you see on the right-hand side. This coincide with the member government utility boundaries, service boundaries, and these models are developed to forecast by major sectors. These sectors are single-family, multifamily, and non-residential sectors. As we get updated information each year from Economic Outlook, as well as the member government's updated information, we do update this every year. The forecast looks out to 2045. Just to give you a quick background on how we actually do this, for each planning area, for each sector, total demand is estimated as the sum total of wholesale, retail, and unbilled portion that we figure out by reconciling gross delivery and what actually is delivered to the members. Both the wholesale and the unbilled portion is estimated using the most recent data that we collect from our member governments. For the retail portion, we use an econometric model, and that model has 2 components. The first one, it figures out how many units, basically dwelling units, are within that planning area, and then it also figures out what is, on average, those units will consume. Multiplying the number of units and their average use for that planning area provide the total demand for retail section. The total number of units, in turn, comes from population projection. And this is an example from Bureau of Economic and Business Research that we collect. And then the unit use, on the other hand, comes from member government data, as well as other providers, such as the American Community Survey, Moody Analytics, some information from member governments, such as price of water, whether there is a reclaim, and so on, and weather. So once we know the per unit use and we know the total unit on that demand planning area, multiplying those provides the retail. And then we add back up the wholesale and unbilled component to get the total demand projection. I have an example here for population projection. For example, we got from Bureau of Economic and Business Research, in short, BEBR, as it's called. What you see here is the population projection for the 3 counties. That's where we start to figure out how many units will be in the demand planning areas. The dashed line are from last year, and the solid line are from this year. In terms of population projection, pretty much what they are saying today is what they said last year. So we don't see much change in terms of the population. We do see, for example, one of the other information we use is employment. Moody Analytics does this. Again, this is by county and also comparing it to what you saw, what we got last year, the dashed line. And the short term, they don't see much change, but in the far term, you can see this year they are predicting a little bit less than what they said last year. This may have some implication in terms of demand in the outer years, not in the short term, but in the outer years, which I will show.
Question real quick.
Yes.
On that one in the outer years, is that reflecting what some are saying that might be a slowdown of the economy and therefore employment projection? Is that the slight change that you're seeing from last year to
Partly, yes. But on if you see on this graph all the way to 2025, pretty much what they did forecast last year is they are on that same path. But in the outer year, it starts to add up. And then you will see the difference, especially after 2035. I will show the demand forecast.
Thank you.
Putting this data as well as other information that I mentioned, you will get this total demand for all member governments. So basically what you see in the top is the regional demand that include the city of Tampa for all the member governments. And that's for a normal weather condition as well as the median projection of beaver information. You can see that it is going to change from 254 where we are today to all the way a little over 293 by 2045. As you can see, there's a little bit of flat once you go through 2035. That's why I was referencing in the prior slide. What you see in the bottom is Tampa Bay Water's expected delivery if this median projection were to be realized. And that number varies from 173 today to 216 by 2045. Just for a perspective, Tampa Bay Water today, under normal condition, can provide up to 225 million gallons per day.
And the primary difference is the city of Tampa's water production.
Yes, and also there are some self-supply from Pasco County, Newport Richey. They are small, but we take that off. Yes.
Thank you.
These projections are by member governments. What you see on the left side of the vertical black line is a historical observation, and on the right side is the projection out to 2045. As you can see that we came from the recession and we recovered pretty good, and as you can see now, the projection are to continue demand for through the member government. Some are growing faster, some not so fast. Looking at the number that I just showed in terms of figures, you can see here, the first line, the 2019 is actually actual observation at 252.4. Next year, 258, this is basically the current water year, and so on. You'll see by 2045, 293.4. Now, in terms of budgeting, what we typically do is we look at the regional projection for that year. In this case, we are looking at 2021. That number is 261.4. We subtract out the self-supply by member government. That leaves us a projected delivery for next water year, 184.7 million gallons per day. This number is about 4 MGD, 4 million gallons per day, more than what we are planning this year. And it is about 2 MGD more than what we were projecting last year. So that shows in a short term, we are seeing a significant pickup for water supply. Staff is right now working on the source allocation to meet this expected demand, and we plan to finalize those in the coming few weeks. The numbers now going for the next 1 plus 5 years, this is the proposed delivery, expected delivery. You can see 2021, 184, the year after 187, all the way to almost 199 by 2026. Now I'm shifting gear a little bit and then showing some of the forecast for South Central Hillsborough County. As you all know, that part of the demand planning area has been growing faster than the rest of the regions, and we do also update accordingly those forecasts. This table shows what we were forecasting we did last year versus the current year. The first column is what was projected last year, and the third column is what is this year. The first line, 2019, is the actual observation at 45.3. As you can see, that area is growing much faster than that anybody can predict. That significant pickup, we are seeing it passing through this projection for the next few years.
Question.
1 second.
Oh,
yes.
I'd rather him finish. Can we finish and then you come back with
if I can
questions?
remember what the question is when I'm finished. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's almost done.
Yeah,
You're on
I'm
the last page.
That's the last page. The region continue to experience increased water demand. We are seeing that get through our updated billing information as well as the economic projection we get. Tampa Bay Water expects delivery of about 185 for the next water year to almost 196 in 5 years. That's about 10.5 MGD in 10 years. The South Central Hillsborough County, as I said, is showing a faster growth than the rest of the member governments. Based on the current projection, and as I show in the economic outlook, there may be some leveling off beyond mid-2030s. Other than that, it's pretty similar to what it was forecast last year. With that, I conclude my presentation and happy to answer any question.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, I think I remember. So there's been a change in our projections from one year to the next for South Hillsborough.
Yes.
What do you attribute that to in your model, mostly?
The change is two. So what the two is where you start. So we have to reconcile that what's been done now. So basically, when we look at the number of accounts, so the recent more billing data will calibrate basically where we start. Even though the rate of growth may not be changing, where you start, if it moves up, then it increases. That's exactly what happened with South Central.
I got you. So that the quality of the information that we're getting from our member governments and the number of accounts and that kind of thing is critical.
It is very critical, yes.
And especially with a member like Hillsborough that's growing so much.
Yes.
That's critically important.
And we can also, because when we get that billing data, we can actually look how much is being consumed by new account. We also look at it for demand management. We looked at, for example, account comes in for the first 1 year, they take water probably almost twice as the existing ones. So having that information help us to track how much is the new account, how much is not the new account, and so on.
Yeah, for the biggest consumer, it's really important that Hillsborough does it, and that's great. And I just encourage all members to make sure that we get good information to our modeling people. So thank you.
Councilwoman Rice, you recognize.
Thank you for the report. I'm curious, is there coordination? Is Tampa Bay Water using the same population projections that we're using at the Regional Planning Council and at our MPOs?
Yes, I know for sure, like Hillsborough County, we all use a median Beaver projection number. We do use other data beyond population projection, but there is consistency there.
And, I would imagine why Pinellas County and St. Pete, the numbers look pretty flat because we're a built-out county. But I do know, at least for St. Petersburg, we're seriously looking at ways to help over the next several years increase density, probably looking at that for Gateway as well. I don't know right now how those plans will affect the overall numbers and trajectory. And I don't know if other cities like Tampa are looking at the same land development regulations and zoning changes as far as density goes. But if these are based on current land development regulations, it's probably important to note that a lot of areas are looking at ways to increase density.
Yes, we do. I didn't want to go in detail, but our model, one of the parameters is actually density. So because we don't have projection for the future, we use the current density. So that's where information, like you mentioned, could be used as part of the forecast.
Well, and I'd like to piggyback. I know you have a question. Just to continue the train of thought, because when I was looking at the amount of information you use, it doesn't say where you're getting your population projections from, but you do use the Bureau of Economic Business Research, our member government economic projections and weather data, and then you have Moody's Analytics. So I guess I'm like, I know our planning commission, we right now are going through extensive information on population. And I don't know, our MPOs are going through the same thing because we're planning for transportation and different things like that. So that's who we use, our member governments, that's who we use. So I guess what I'm saying is, how do you choose the people you're using, and why wouldn't you use the same people we're using to go forward?
Good question. So the similarity I mentioned, there is two factors to estimate water use. One is the number of units, basically physical unit by demand planning area. That is related to population projection. That comes from the Bureau of Economic Research, which is the same as the Hillsborough County. But they don't provide additional information like income, person per household. There are other parameters that impact water use. Those comes from other sources. So we're basically using a variety of sources to help us estimate the potential use of water.
Well, I know our planning commission, I know the other member governments still have planning commissions. We do. And it's kind of specialized. And they actually they're giving us updated information quite frequently because our population is increasing so fast. And I guess that kind of goes to your chart for Hillsborough County, which you proposed by 2026, even during this dry spell that we just had, I think we used 90 million gallons a day. Is that, I don't know, Beth, you could shake your head, yes or no? Yes, 90 million gallons a day. And I guess these are averages, I can see that, but I think we're going to I think our numbers are going to be a little bit more than that, that's on the chart. So I just hope that y'all are working. This is definitely, we're coming a long way. When we asked for this 5 years ago, we didn't get it. So I appreciate the information. I think we're at least moving in the right direction, but I do think the member governments do utilize different sources, and somehow we need to melt those together. Yes, who was next over here?
Madam Chairman, I would caution staff to look at the density issue that Commissioner Rice brought up. We're a small user of Tampa Bay water as far as total gallons concerned, but we are growing in density. We had a large apartment complex that came online this past weekend, and there's another one coming online next month. So I would be skeptical at your projection that Newport Richey is going to use less water in 2045 than it used this year. Because those are just two examples, and we are going to see an increased density. So,
good points. Yes. Who's Commissioner Starkey?
Well, I was going to bring this up under commissioner items, but after our executive committee meeting, I went back and met with my staff, and I feel that our utilities directors should meet regularly. We thought of quarterly would be a good number, and I think that these population numbers and projections need to be brought up all the time. And I think it's incumbent upon us to let Tampa Bay Water know when things are changing back home. For example, in Pasco County, we are buying up some of the FGUA properties, so Lindrick, Aqua, and I was just texting with my utilities director because I hadn't asked this question before. Are those, is Lindrick on its own well? I don't remember all the different, where they all get their water from, but they're telling me our numbers are already put in here. So when we buy Lindrick, how many customers does Lindrick have? 3,000. When we bring three customers on, boom, on one day, or not one day, but at one, next year, how does that affect our numbers? But that, I feel that's part of our responsibility to report that to this body. So I think, but I think regularly quarterly meetings with our utility directors would go a long way towards having good open communication.
Music to my ears. How long have I been saying that on this board? You're finally coming on board. Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I think this Bureau of Economic and Business Research, that's Bieber? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, so that does factor into our county's projections of growth through our planning commission. So you take the data that each municipal government gives you, and then you do some further vetting to it and run it through your own calculations and projections? Is that?
So for the population, we just get the same thing that you are getting from the providers.
Okay.
But the billing data help us to know where we are today. And it was a good question, comment coming, for example, new account coming in for Pasco County, for example. If that's the case, we will be able to see it through the billing information. So then we will be able to adjust this where we start. So the forecast is coming from economic projections. But where we start is where we get the data from our member government to make sure that we have the account, we have the delivery today.
And then you kind of confirm that or audit it yourselves?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And I would just add on to what Councilwoman Rice said, that in Hillsborough County as well, land use is a moving target. We are going through extensive land use workshops now and considering ways to manage our growth in focusing density, transit-oriented development, smart growth. That is always kind of improving those methods and thinking, and the politics of it changes too. So we are currently going through changes which would maybe not impact the growth projection numbers or the demand numbers, but might impact where the delivery is. So just to mention that.
Yeah. Certainly, I think we will be communicating with the counties and making sure that we consider those ones. In fact, this is a ground truthing. Sometimes projection come from different places. You need to go out and meet with the county people and make sure that's the case.
Further comments? This is a really good report. Thank you. I think it's a great starting point. And we've, this is a lot more information than we've gotten in the past. So I think we're good.
One final comment. Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of things that are obviously within our control as Tampa Bay Water. And to your point, Commissioner Smith, I think that whether it's conservation efforts that each of our counties are making, our growth management planning that each of our counties are making, and transit-oriented development that each of our counties are going through, even in our MPO is showing increased densities along corridors and some of our areas, our community center areas. So there's going to be some of that pressure in forecasting 3% growth in population, which isn't much over the through the 2045 timeframe. That we're going to have to provide additional planning, additional conservation, and additional supply. So we all have that kind of responsibility together to manage what each of our utilities are getting from Tampa Bay Water. So it's a kind of again, that group effort.
Yes.
Partners together. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We're going to go.
Will you give me a call the next one? Okay. The next item is J1A and B will both be covered by Mr. John Kennedy.
Good morning. Morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Today's presentation under item 1A updates you in some detail on the programs, both short and long term, that were underway now to meet Hillsborough County's South area needs that Dr. Asaifa was just discussing in some detail with you. No actions requested under item A1 under A, but we will be asking for action under B. We've been working at the staff level since 2016 on these plans to meet Hillsborough's needs Attachment A in your agenda item lists the important junctures of these discussions, including more than 10 trips to the board in front of you to report on either status or requesting approval of components of our actions. In June, for example, you approved plans that are now in motion, and today staff is presenting this update on where we are with those actions. The need in South County is shown on the right-hand side, right hand of this slide. It's a little bit different than Dr. Asafa's projection, but that in this discussion is not particularly relevant, because regardless of whether you're using county projections, Tampa Bay water projections, last year's projections, next year's projections, the conclusion is the same. We have to increase delivery capacity to this area of the system. The best way to do this, given the time that we have, is to continue the program that you approved at your June 2019 meeting. Immediate, short, and long-term actions, which are summarized on this slide. Today, we're going to go through some of those actions in detail. This map has been presented many times before and shows where we deliver drinking water to South Hillsborough County. Green star is the county's central facility. The other two stars are the county's Lithia water treatment plant. For perspective, those stars are more than 15 miles apart, and we are unable to produce something on a PowerPoint slide that can give you the details of the route. Perhaps when we come back in February with our route studies, we'll do something with poster boards, but we just can't get it on the slide. The good news is that we've been working on the immediate action plan to take advantage of these existing facilities, and it has already happened. The county central facility, this green star on the chart, is receiving more supply using the existing plumbing and the existing Tampa Bay water supplies that are tied to it. No capital costs, no memorandum of understanding or joint project agreements were required to make this happen. For example, this past September and October, the county took more than 13 million gallons a day and almost 14 million gallons a day average at this location during these unusually hot and dry months. And if the county needs, Tampa Bay Water can furnish with existing infrastructure 19 million gallons a day at this location. That's up from the 10 to 11 that they historically took over the past few years at this spot. So that's good news. More good news on the short-term plan is also underway. A new booster station on our main connection between our regional system and Lithia will increase the flow from existing regional permitted supplies and capacities to Lithia by 5 million gallons a day. This figure on the right is an excerpt from the report prepared by our engineering consultant that shows us the best area to site the booster station between us and Lithia. They're in neighborhoods, but we need to site it properly for the maximum benefit. The goal is to be as close as possible to the green part of this line, which is the path of our existing regional connection between our facility and Lithia. We're in procurement right now for an engineer for this project, and under item B this morning, we'll recommend property acquisition for this booster station site. This short-term plan will be online by 2024, meet the county's needs until 2028, regardless of the projections that are being used, has a budget of $9 million that's already funded in your capital improvement plan, needs no memorandum of understanding or joint project agreements. This is totally within control of the Tampa Bay Water Board. Next, on the long-term plan, we'd like to talk about pipeline. Long-term plan includes a new pipeline. Depending on the route and delivery point that's finally chosen, it's going to be between 17 and 25 miles in length. Okay? We're evaluating all supply options available, including developing the SHARP program, but SHARP on its own is not projected to be large enough to meet the county's needs in this area, so we need to install a pipeline regardless. Building more delivery capacity through a pipeline to this area from the regional system is part of the solution. In fact, it's the largest part of the quantity of the solution. For this pipeline, which will take between 6 and 8 years to design, permit, acquire property, and construct, we need to know where we're heading and connecting by March 2020 for us to get the pipe commissioned by 2028. And we need to know if we're going to Lithia or to a new water campus that has been discussed at the staff level with Hillsborough County. The last time the county requested a point of connection, It was a written request from the county's chair to Tampa Bay Water's chair. That letter guided both agency staffs to progressively invest more resources and costs on detailed planning, memorandum of understanding, joint project agreements, and ultimately capital improvements. That resulted in the central facility. It also resulted in the existing transmission main that takes regional supply down to Lithia. For a pipeline, which will take, we are proceeding with some work on the long-term plan regardless, including pipeline corridor studies that you approved last fall, 14 months ago, and a public outreach effort. And in October, this past October, you awarded a construction contract for the expansion of our high-service pump station. This pump expansion is necessary to feed the new pipeline, whether we're going to Lithia or to a new water campus. It's required regardless. The photos on the right of this slide show the small pump at the high-service pump station that's being replaced in the expansion. And to put this in size, this is the base plate, the blue part of that pump that's above the floor is at about my chest height. To give you an idea of the size of the facilities that we're talking about here, it's going to be a 2,000 horsepower unit, 22 million gallon a day. Would like to talk a little bit more about the pipeline on the public outreach component that's been completed. This is the summary of the responses on the public outreach for the corridors that are being studied by the engineers. The top 5 concerns are blown up and accented on the left of this slide. This feedback is being considered for each of the corridors that are being studied. For a transmission main in an urban setting, this really doesn't include things like water service interruptions. Rather, it means maintaining traffic patterns, lane closures, and access to businesses during construction. A pipeline that we're talking about is much more similar to a road expansion project. We'd like to talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. I stated we need to know by next March whether we're heading to Lithia plant or to the new water campus that's been discussed at the staff level if we want to be commissioned by 2028. The pipeline project of this magnitude is a 6 to 8 year project, the scope between 17 and 25 miles, and it's between probably a 48 and 60 inch diameter pipe, most of it in urbanized corridors, including tunnels under the interstate and tunnel under the Alafia River and other smaller but yet still significant roadway intersection crossings where we have to go underneath. Urban design, property acquisition, and construction simply takes longer than installing rural pipeline, which is a lot of the pipeline that exists in Tampa Bay, the rest of Tampa Bay water system. The photo on the right gives you a sense of this. It's from the recently completed Northwest Hillsborough transmission main project. This view is a jack and bore pit at the intersection of Gun Highway and Citrus Park for a 36-inch water line. This job was brought online, I believe, in 2015 by Tampa Bay Water staff. Here we'd be talking about larger diameter pipelines and many such intersections that have to be dealt with. Also, would like to talk for a minute that Tampa Bay Water acquires right-of-way through easements, as Tampa Bay Water does not on its own public rights-of-way, as does FDOT, county road, and city road departments. So depending on the final route selected, the pipeline, the preliminary count of easements for the pipeline is 100 easements. Easements cannot be acquired through the eminent domain process until design is advanced. And we can't start design until we know what dots we're connecting both at the start and at the end. So based on what dots we're going to connect, based on what dots, change the slide. Sorry, bear with me. Based on the dots that we're going to connect, we may need to procure more than one engineering firm to execute the design, and also hire more than one construction firm to do what we can to improve the schedule. The scope of this project makes it more similar, as I said, to a major road widening project than to a water line. On the left is a summary of the preliminary schedule for the major pipeline project, whether it's to Lithia or to a proposed water campus. Very similar project durations. We're in the planning phase now with the corridor studies and the public outreach work. If we perform each step sequentially that's on the left side by adding up the steps, it would take 8 to 10 years to complete. Once a project is authorized, however, we'll be able to perform some of the work tasks in parallel to save as much time in design, permitting, and property acquisition that we can. However, there are too many unknowns at this point to credibly represent that we can say, for example, half of this project time. For comparison, on the right is Hillsborough County's Lithia Pinecrest Road Widening Project, part of the county's long-term CIP. This published schedule shows 3.5 years from completion of planning to completion of construction of a project that's a little bit less. It's between 4 and 5 miles. For the pipeline we're dealing with at this point, we're at least 3 to 4 times this length, and we need to tie down the delivery point before we can wrap up and conclude our planning period, which is why we've recommended closing that planning period by next March. The last part of the long-term plan is the SHARP project. As I stated, SHARP on its own is not projected to have enough capacity to meet all of the county's long-term needs, which is why a pipeline is needed regardless. So we should consider SHARP along with the other water supply projects in the long-term master water plan update that you approved this time last year. To evaluate the feasibility of SHARP, we need 2 pieces of information. We need to conduct an aquifer performance test to determine the capacity that's available through SHARP, and you have authorized us to start that process. And then secondly, we need to determine the cost of reclaim credits, which your staff is going to be standing by for discussion and direction by the board. Both pieces of information, capacity and cost, are necessary to make a recommendation. For the aquifer performance test, we are underway with design of the test and monitor wells, and we're conducting a detailed search for properties in the area of interest to support them. This concludes our update on the work to date for the immediate, short, and long-term things that we've been doing to meet the needs in this area. On this slide, we list the next steps that we are taking. Today, we'll be asking on our next agenda item for approvals to help us secure a booster station site. In February, we expect to bring a recommendation for a booster station engineer to you and the results of our pipeline corridor studies for your review and conceptual approval. This concludes our item J1A. I'll be happy to answer your questions before moving on.
Questions? This end. Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, there's 2 routes, obviously, that we're looking at, and one's determined. We don't know about the new water campus. And what's the time frame on that? And what's our kind of drop dead to make sure that we get the product to that area as far as the demands are required? Where are we in that?
Well, at the staff level, the water campus has been discussed significantly. Where we're standing by is waiting for elected official direction on the water campus. We are expecting a 6 to 8 year time to get water to the water campus, and so our drop dead date for a 2028 delivery is next March.
Is that meet their demands, and how much quicker could we get it to Lithia? I know that's not the preferred site, but
well, realistically, we can probably get to Lithia somewhere between 6 and 12 months earlier, but most of the easements we have to require are between the high service pump station and Lithia.
Got it.
As far as the number of easements.
So do we have any indication on that time frame for notification about the water campus? Any sense of that? Do you guys know anything about that?
You mean?
The decision for the water campus so that we know where to build it to.
Actually, because it's about a $400 million project, we are having discussions at the board. We have a board workshop this week. We are evaluating all of our impact fees, all the fees that go into planning, our water and wastewater rates are being discussed this week. So until we have that discussion and we give our administration direction, we don't know which area which way we're going to go. And I will say one thing too, some of this decision could be helped by the utility directors getting with staff and deciding on these reclaimed water credits. That would also help.
It would help what?
It would help, we're looking at the whole.
For the SHARP project?
the sharp and everything in one big picture. We're not just looking at these things in isolation. So, we need to, I don't know if staff has met with the utility directors on the reuse credits, but, because I didn't see anything on our agenda today as a report from that. Mr. Jordan, do you have anything on that?
Yes, ma'am. And as I discussed earlier, the board contemplated this may be a topic for the board to discuss at a workshop, and I think that's certainly a good way to go. In addition to that, I did send out the discussions that we'd had prior to bring the board back up to a reminder of where we were and what we've worked through with the member governments. And also, Mr. Hurd sent similar information to all the member government utility directors to make sure they had all the latest information. And we're certainly happy to go ahead and schedule that meeting. Moving forward, that's not something we could be happy to do. But again, I think we can do both. We can continue meeting with the utility directors and then in anticipation of the board, just to maybe continue the staff level discussion.
Okay.
I thought at the executive committee meeting, I was reading back through our minutes, I thought we had decided to go ahead and move forward with those discussions, didn't we?
Yeah. But I think at the staff level, but I think what they're talking about is a policy position, right, Matt? Are you talking about policy with regard to this board?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, but the whole discussion was about you need a decision by March 2020, and we said you have to go meet with the utility directors to discuss this formula for the reclaimed water credits. And especially our utility director, and I don't believe there has been a discussion yet. There has not been a discussion, so we've kind of wasted a month of no discussion with staff and our staff on the reclaimed credits. So, we all got to get on the same page here and move forward. And I didn't know, I went back through the minutes. I didn't understand that we are waiting for this board to give you direction to move forward on those discussions. I thought we already told you at the executive committee meeting to go forward with those discussions.
Yes, ma'am. I was looking back at the executive committee meeting and the board meeting in October, and there was discussion, and the recommendation from staff was we agreed that the board would be a good topic for the workshop. And again, at the time, we anticipated that coming up in January, but we'll be happy to move forward with staff discussions. We did, again, bring them up to speed on what we had done the previous year or so, the discussions that we've had with your member governments. So we'll be happy to move that forward. And if we didn't understand that, we'll certainly get that moving.
Well, we can't move forward on the booster station until we have that discussion.
Oh, what?
I don't
No, we can move forward with booster. Has nothing to do with this credit.
Well, but they need an MOU.
On the booster, we don't.
No,
The
next agenda item does
depends
not
on
require
if
that.
Sharp wrapped into it. See, our utility directors, Beth Chanel is here. Could you come to the podium, please? This is why discussions with utility directors are so important.
Good morning, Commissioners. Beth Chanel, Water Resources Department. Regarding the booster station, that will provide us a short-term remedy. The long-term remedy will require the discussion regarding the reclaim credits and so on.
Okay, the long term. Okay, thanks.
I think there's a lot to discuss here on the formula for the reclaimed water. And I'm curious, and maybe I'm diving into something we need to say for a workshop, but maybe or all our utility directors to get together, but I don't really understand why that has to do with where you're going to put your new facility, unless, are we talking about, my understanding with reclaimed water rates was it was going to be, we needed to come up with the number that was our cost of production of reclaimed water, that it's not a profit center necessarily.
That's correct.
So.
And we're going to discuss that at the workshop?
And that's what we anticipate, and be happy to, again, we'll set up a meeting with the utility directors to continue those discussions as well in the meantime.
Okay.
So now that our workshop has been pushed off, does that mean your vote is going to be pushed off for where you're going to put your? I'm just concerned about you guys and not moving with your new
we can't
infrastructure.
We can't say until we make an adjustment on our water and wastewater rates. We would. I mean, it's a $400 million project. We would not be able. We can't say where a plant. We know where we'd like for the plant to go, but we cannot at this point make a definite decision on where that plant's going to go until we make a decision on our water and wastewater rates.
Well,
I mean, I know.
I don't understand that, but I'm not a utility director.
Well, because it's $400 million, we don't exactly have that much money laying around.
But you're going to get your costs back, and so I would think you could filter that in on how much it costs you. But maybe it's over my head, and I should be quiet.
Well, I think that's a great point, though. I mean, there's a project that you all are going to be looking at capital-wise for your campus, and the incremental difference between whether this cost, I don't know what those costs are going to come down, what those credits are going to be worth, whether it's $5 or $10. And I've just made numbers up, but I mean, that incremental difference is not going to determine the project cost and whether you go forward with your campus. It doesn't mean we don't need to be doing that at post haste so that we can all kind of get on board with that going forward with any project. And I mean, I'm throwing that out there. Maybe you all can say something different to that. I don't want this like all of a sudden finger pointing going on. We want to be a active participant here and get the information that they need immediately or as quickly as we can. But I suspect that that's not the decision maker of your decision.
I think the best. Oh, yes, it is.
The credits.
Oh, no.
The credit
no.
difference.
But if Sharp is wrapped into it,
that's
yes.
fine. That's fine.
I think what we need to do, staff needs to meet with our staff, our utility directors, go over the full project of the plant and bring that back to the board so we can see exactly I haven't seen all the details of that new plant. And look at the total costs and what goes in, what's going to be recovered, what's not recovered, and then go from there. And then at that point, I think you'll have the whole picture in front of you.
But just want to make sure I'm clear. The water supply project that we're considering, there's 3 of them. One of them is Sharp, right?
Yes, Ken Hurd, Chief Science Officer. Yes, sir. That one of the projects is Sharp, one is surface water, and one is desal.
When is that decision supposed to be made?
In 2022.
Okay. 2 years down the road. Mm-hmm. So really, again, we don't know whether the Sharp project is going to be the one that this board chooses as our water supply project. So I just want to make sure I know what we're talking about in terms of decisions here. Before March, I don't know, all of a sudden March became this critical date, and I'm not sure why that is being thrown up as a critical date. So
just one point to make is that whether or not Sharp is selected, we're still recommending the pipeline project. So that project would move forward, irrespective of that.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
It's just we need, and I think we're moving forward. It's just that other decisions have to be made in conjunction with this board's decisions to be able to move forward. And that's on Sharp, and that's on any MOUs that have to come before us, and our internal processes at the county with the water and the wastewater rates. So I think, it's all just got to work together. It goes back to the points we've been making throughout this meeting of the utility directors and staff really being on the same page. Yes?
Seems to me that the Hillsborough County, if they come up with their area they want this water to come to, then they can go ahead and decide that, and then you plan on getting there. So, I mean, why would they have to hold up on where they want that water to come to? If it's in the line, or has it got to be a certain line based on the pipeline you're using?
Yeah, we were just waiting on Hillsborough County to establish this new point of connection or the water campus, wherever this delivery point is. And then once we would work out an MOU on that, then we would move forward with it for the pipeline project. Our thought moving forward is that that would be separate from the Sharp MOU. That would be a separate MOU. This pipeline can move forward without resolving that reuse credit issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that changes anything. I think actually Hillsborough County needs to decide where they want their campus.
That's, and that
When y'all
has
get
a
that
lot to do.
decided, They're going
Right.
to make that pipe come to that area.
And we will be deciding that probably in the next 30 to 60 days.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yep.
And so today, you're asking us to approve an option agreement and purchase and sale agreement. Exactly what's that? for?
Under 1B, yes, ma'am. As just described previously, the booster station is part of the short-term plan to increase delivery to South Hillsborough County before a new pipeline can come on in 2028. The goal is to find a location as close to the green line as possible, and we've been able to do that. And this is an urbanized area. We looked at more than 30 properties in or near this green line that were for sale. There were 3 possibilities. We're recommending a 1.3 acre site represented by the green star on this graphic. Sellers expressed interest, and Tampa Bay Water recommends activities commence for acquisition in a friendly manner. The discussion price is $380,000 plus other property costs. An option agreement, if you approved by the board and delegation to the general manager, will hold the property for us for up to 6 months from the market. That will give us time to perform due diligence prior to closing. These negotiations are being managed by your new real estate coordinator, Miss Andrea College, who joined us this October 1st when her position was approved by this board for the fiscal 20 budget. Like to just, so you can put eyes on Miss College, this is the person who's working for us and for this board's interest, and one of our first assignments was to try to get us a booster station location. Staff recommends the board authorize the general manager to execute an option agreement up to $25,000 to hold the property and a purchase and sale agreement up to $400,000, including the cost of the option agreement for fee acquisition. Delegation of these parameters to the general manager allows your staff to move on the acquisition in between your bi-monthly board meetings. This booster station is on the Tampa Bay water system to allow us to put more water through existing Tampa Bay water lines to increase capacity to Lithia.
Great, thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed. Show that pass. Thank you, John. Good report. Next is receive and file. I need a motion to receive and file reports.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass. Is there anything else to come before the board? Commissioner Starkey?
Yes, so I, like some other members here, attend the FAC conferences, and over the last few meetings, other counties have been trying to move some discussion on increasing commissioners' ability to discuss water issues in the state. And I understand that other counties and other areas don't have something like Tampa Bay Water. And I think it would be very good for FAC to hear a presentation from Tampa Bay Water at some time about how we come together in this region to solve the water problems. Because I think there are other areas that are getting very frustrated and maybe could learn from the example that we have here. So I've been communicating with the committee at the staff at FAC, and I'd like to get back to you on that and see when it might be appropriate, which one of the meetings. But I think putting Tampa Bay Water, and if there's another water authority that we may want to add to that, I don't know. I know what we have, not sure what everyone else has, but I think would help many of the other counties in the state to learn what we've done here.
I totally agree. There's been a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, any other business? I hope everyone has a great holiday season ahead, and I wish you all Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and with that, we are adjourned.